All right, Eric, I hope you're ready. You ready? I need to start by introducing Egbert first. I don't know what there is to say about Egbert. It'll take forever. I think you all know he's the chairman and chief executive officer of Integral, a national urban development company he co-founded in 1993 with a mission to create value in cities and rebuild the fabric of communities. The company is obviously headquartered here in Atlanta and specializes in large-scale mixed-use development projects in a wide variety of housing and housing-anchored developments in the Mid-Atlantic, Southeast, Southwest, and Western regions of the United States. As I've got to know Egbert, like John Yates, he personifies service above self. His is a remarkable journey from Antigua to Atlanta. You've been a pillar of our community. I don't know if you remember, but 12 years ago, I called you up. I said, hey, I'm Adrian Cronje. I'm a South African American. I have this harebrained idea about starting a not-for-profit. You took the call. And we sat at the Commerce Club, and man, we got lost in conversation around my hero, Nelson Mandela, and all the things to do and not to do. Egbert, I'm happy to report that that's a thriving not-for-profit today, helping a lot of kids in our community, and I'm extremely grateful for that. So thank you for everything that you do. Will you please come onto the stage and introduce your fellow Penn leader, Erica James. Thank you, Egbert.
Thank you, President Adrian. This is absolutely a special privilege for me because I am going to be talking to a lady who has had a foot in each of two cities that have played a major role in my educational and professional career. One, of course, is Atlanta. The other is Philadelphia. Philadelphia is the city where they tear down street lights and set cars on fire when they win Super Bowls. And I am hoping that we get a chance to figure out if that's who we are in Atlanta. So, Adrian, I know what you meant about 2017, but back to the business at hand. And I have a few notes on Erica, but we all know her. You all called her the rock star at the beginning, so she really needs no introduction, so I'll make my remarks very, very short. And Egbert and Erica didn't sell out the room. Erica sold out the room. Erica became the dean of the Wharton School on July 1, 2020. She's trained as an organizational psychologist, and Erica is a leading expert on crisis leadership, workplace diversity, and management strategy. Prior to her appointment at Wharton, she was the John Harlan Dean at Emory University's Gozeta Business School from 2014 to 2020, right in time for COVID. An award-winning educator, accomplished consultant, and innovative researcher, she has paved the way for women in leadership in both education and throughout corporate America. Dean James serves on the boards of Morgan Stanley, the Economic Club of New York, Pomona College, and the Philadelphia Orchestra and Kimmel Center. She's a sought-after thought leader whose expertise has been quoted by the Wall Street Journal, MSNBC, and Bloomberg, and on and on and on. And she takes the role that she plays very seriously. Her latest book is The Prepared Leader, Emerge from Any Crisis More Resilient Than Before. It was published by the Wharton School Press, and she co-authored with Lynn Perry Wooten, no relationship, the president of Simmons University. So Erica, will you please come up here and join me on the stage? We're going to try to cover 4 areas very, very quickly up here. One is the role of universities as key drivers in innovation and opportunity in major cities like Atlanta and Philadelphia. Higher ed's ROI, return on investment, or the value proposition perception issue that has been in the news a lot recently, and the importance of educational outcomes. Third, recent actions by the federal government and the eroding credibility on the field of higher education. And then Dean James had some advice for the class of 2025. I'm going to ask her about that. It's the importance of recognition, reflection, and resiliency. You should know I'm a Penn alum. I did my undergraduate degree in civil engineering, graduate degree in structural engineering, and then in Wharton School I got a master's in finance and in accounting. So I spent 7 long years at Penn, so Penn is very dear to me. I met my wife there. I've had 2 daughters go to Penn, so I'm a Penn guy too, okay? I'm an Atlanta guy, but I'm a Penn guy too. And I've been a trustee at the university since 1996. I should be rolling off soon. You've been gone about 5 years, right? Somewhere there.
Hard to believe, yes.
Okay. So what's it like being back in Atlanta now?
It's warm. No, so I mean that actually, literally the temperature is much warmer than it is in Philadelphia at the moment, but it is actually a very warm feeling. So walking into this room and seeing so many familiar faces and being reminded of the relationships and the people and the community that's here has been remarkable. So it's good to be back in Atlanta.
All right, so we're going to jump into this
Please.
Quickly, because higher ed has managed to hog the spotlight a bit for some unknown reason.
We'll gladly give it up.
That's right. So, universities are obviously very important engines for commerce, innovation, and are drivers of major development in cities across the country. Atlanta and Philadelphia specifically come to mind in this conversation. And Penn, as a university, and Wharton as its business school, are part of the eds and meds universe that has fueled a lot of growth there in Philadelphia and in the Northeast region more broadly. So what is it about universities that make them so influential and impactful, and how does that play? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I would say that's almost a layup question, because the unique thing about universities is that we have a pretty simple business model. We have a simple mission, and that is to create research that impacts the world and to disseminate that information and knowledge to the next generation of future leaders. That's all we do. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that makes this moment in time so challenging is the core, the crux of what we are, what we have done the entirety of our life cycle, and hopefully will continue to do in the future, is to create the knowledge and the research that makes for medical advances, that builds the roads and the infrastructure within cities, that creates commerce, that does all of the things that have led to a thriving society. And when that is threatened, it not only threatens the universities that produce that information, that content, but it threatens the way of life for what we've known for our entire existence.
Totally, got it. So then let's move education into not a more practical, because that's practical in and of itself, but a more practical frame. Georgia is very business friendly. Atlanta is very business friendly, and we have a lot of Fortune 500 companies here. What do you say to business and how they should be engaged with higher institutions of higher ed?
Yeah, this is something that I've been advocating for really since the moment that I came to Atlanta and became dean at Emory, because I saw a community that was so prolific in the business realm. And the fact that the only relationship really between the business community and the Georgia Techs and the Emorys and the Oglethorpes, I know Oglethorpe's president is here, was really a recruiting, an employer-employee relationship. And I think that there was so much more to be gained from engagement with each other than just hiring the next wave of talent. So I think the more we higher education understands what is it that business is trying to achieve, the more that we can put our research heft to work to help facilitate what's happening in industry. And the more industry is able to convey what their needs are, or the more that we in higher ed are able to communicate what our needs are, what our capabilities are, how we can serve the broader community, the more we will be advanced by understanding what each partner needs. So I think engagement, understanding, being involved in co-collaborating with some of the research that's happening, being involved not only in hiring our students, but helping understand how to prepare them for the workforce of the future. ChatGPT was just on the stage a few minutes ago with the poem. That is the least of what that technology can do. And you all know in every facet of your business, everything that you're doing, AI and analytics are changing how we work, and universities need to better understand how to prepare the workforce for that future world.
So, Erica, do you think that message is getting out? Do you think that that business is sharing that view, especially in light of the criticism that's out there broadly?
You know, I try to separate what's happening at the administration level, so what's happening in government and the policy decisions that are being made, from what I see day to day on the ground. And what I see day to day on the ground is a lot of engagement, is a lot of conversation, is a lot of learning and transacting among the actual people who are doing the work. Mm-hmm. So I do think the message is getting out. I hope that the message doesn't get lost in the broader fray of the political realm. That's where I don't have the answer to that. But I do think that as long as we continue to stay engaged with each other, we are continuing to talk, we're continuing to share information, we're continuing to provide resources back and forth, we'll continue to advance in the way that is beneficial, mutually beneficial.
So, but all of the focus really has been on elite universities. That's where the attention grabbing has happened. Obviously, Emory's and Georgia Tech's are in that crowd. But there are a lot of other institutions of higher learning that are educating more broadly. You've got Kennesaw, you've got the HBCUs, you've got a lot of other universities that are also an important part of the infrastructure of educating and learning. And it seems like they're sort of left out of the conversation. And is there an opportunity there to broaden the narrative and have a different discussion, just more instead of just this targeted bullseye?
Yeah, I think it depends on what narrative, because in some ways I think you want to be left out of the narrative.
I know that well.
But I do think that so much of the attention, even outside of what we've been experiencing the last year or so, so much of the attention has been on sort of the Ivies or the uber elite universities and the call to question about, is there a return on investment? Are they worth it? Do you really, graduate and are you able to contribute to the world if you go and spend all this money to get this degree, et cetera? So there is some question mark that is largely tagged to the more prominent, larger scale elite universities. But I think what we've missed is the world is big and the needs are vast, and those universities serve a subset of the population. Community colleges serve a subset of the population. HBCUs and women's colleges serve a subset of the population. Large public research universities serve a subset of the population. Private liberal arts colleges serve a subset of the technical colleges. Yeah. So we're not talking about all of the different ways in which people are getting what they need in order to be able to contribute to society when we only talk about the 100,000 kids who are attending one of the 6 universities that seem to be in the limelight at the moment. So I think that there's a real need for all of us to recognize that we all can be served, our children can be served, the communities can be served when we start to pay attention to and invest in all of the different forms of education that are providing the resources and the skills and the capabilities to advance the next generation of society.
And I get that and totally agree with that. But we are very seldom engaged in intelligent and constructive debate. So I think you should expect that this focus on Penn, Wharton, and others will continue, because it's not about the substance of it, it's really about the sound bites, right? So I did hear that lovely poem that was read, and I can't wait for the day when you look up the author, and 90% of the authors will be ChatGPT.
But there are people behind ChatGPT.
Agreed,
right?
agreed. Yes,
So
you're right.
So
you're right.
it didn't create itself.
Well, and a year ago, I think it was about a year ago, Penn and Wharton made huge investments in AI, and just give us a flavor of what that has meant to the university and to Wharton.
So AI is already changing everything.
Right.
And the debate initially, I remember November of 2023, and I'm actually in Atlanta at the Chastain restaurant, and I'm with someone who says, have you heard of this thing called ChatGPT? It can create poems, and you put in some information, it'll feed back all this stuff. And I had not heard of it at the time, but literally a week later, it was the only thing that I'm hearing about. And so it just speaks to the power and speed with which things are changing. And the biggest concern at universities when I went back from the holiday break in 23, back in January, was how are we going to prevent students from cheating? We got to keep this technology out of the school system, et cetera. And I think we at Wharton and at Penn we're really reflecting on, is that the smart thing to do? If we were trying to prepare the next generation for something that already exists, we can't hide it from them. We can't prevent them from using it. And in fact, not only should we not prevent them, but we should be teaching them how to use it and how to develop it and how to, most importantly, utilize it in a way that has guardrails from an ethical standpoint and a policy standpoint, et cetera. So all of those things, I think, require us to go further and deeper and more into investing in this technology so that we can have a greater responsibility for how it ultimately gets used.
And little did you know that 2023, which was just 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, would feel like a lifetime ago, right? In terms of what's happened with the technology. For those of you who don't know, so one of the Penn presidents, either Judy Roden or Amy Gutman, said that when she goes to Asia, all over Asia, she is like the president of the country. The reception she receives, because across Asia, not because of Penn, but because of Wharton. So the Wharton brand in Asia is off the charts. And I don't care what village you go into, what town in Asia, everybody knows Wharton. Not sure why, because the engineering students hated Wharton. But it says something about how the rest of the world views our system here as we attack our system and point out all the failures, not to build or strengthen it, but to take it down. And it does kind of feel like just outright attack, right?
That's exactly what it feels like. But I'll share that there are probably some things we should, so I try to look at everything that's happening in the attacks on higher ed as feedback. And at our school, we have a mantra, feedback is a gift. And it doesn't always feel that way. But I think what we're hearing is information that we actually need to be paying attention to. We haven't gotten it all right. And there are certainly things that higher education has done over the years that might warrant critique. But I would say that the punishment on higher education right now does not fit the crime. And so our responsibility is how do we learn from, understand what the criticism is, and make the changes that are necessary, not how do we completely undermine and throw out the one greatest export of this country, which is our higher education system. Everyone in the world finds our system in envy. That is why so many students from outside of the U.S. are wanting to come to American colleges and universities. That is why there is so much activity that is happening by American colleges and universities outside of the U.S., because they have valued what we have. We haven't gotten it all right, and we've done some things that are probably worth revisiting, and some of the critique may be warranted. But the assault that I feel that is happening at this moment is dangerous, to put it mildly.
Well, and you use the word in there that I don't think is in the narrative enough, which is this is actually a U.S. export. So as we talk about jobs and so on, we think about a factory floor and you're manufacturing whatever, but the reality is education, higher ed, is an export for this country. And nobody's really in that narrative quite enough. So let's stay with the recent actions by the federal government without taking you in the wrong place. I am particularly sensitive to that because I will hear about it as well. And I think we have a board meeting, a trustees meeting in 2 weeks. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to be
12 days.
Okay, so I'll be on good behavior. So I have a question here. 2025 has been a particularly challenging year for higher ed, with rapid wholesale change being sought on many institutions and more that appears on the horizon. And you said some of this. The critiques have been numerous and certainly noisy. What's your response to the criticism? And as a crisis scholar, and I would say higher ed is kind of in crisis, what advice would you offer other academic leaders in this moment?
So the attacks are coming at all levels, but let's just take the one that I've been hearing the longest. And I started hearing this the day that I became dean at Emory Goizueta's Business School. And that is, is the degree still worth it? It is expensive to go to some of these colleges and universities. And most families in the country can't afford the sticker price. And so it does give us pause to wonder, are we creating a system where we're exacerbating the haves and have-nots, because it's those who can afford and get into these schools and those who can't. And we know that talent exists in both populations. So that is a criticism that I think we have got to figure something out. Our business model for higher ed is tuition, and the cost of tuition, as high as it is, doesn't pay for the actual coverage of what it costs to educate a student. It's philanthropy, and it is government funding. Mm-hmm. And all three of those right now are threatened.
That's right. Yeah.
So we've got to think differently about how do we fund, how do we support this great institution that is higher education in the United States. And I think some of those things will continue to play a role. You've got to pay for any service or product that you buy, so that's our tuition. If we are a mission and we continue to be a nonprofit, then ideally there will continue to be some funders who want to support that, whether they're federal administration funders, state funders, local funders, individual funders, et cetera. But that can't be all that we do. So one of the fortunate things about being in a business school or any professional school is we're sort of the mind of how do we earn our keep. And so we've created business units that bring in other resources to help offset when one of those other funding sources goes down or goes dry. So we've got to find ways for broader universities to take care of themselves and not be at the mercy all of the time of other people's whims, because that's what we find ourselves in now. So I think if we do that kind of critical analysis on any one of the issues, on the immigration issue, on the tariff issues, all of which are affecting higher education, we'll find the answers, but we've got to put in the work to do that. Now, whether or not the criticisms or the actions that are being taken are valid actions, As I've said, I think the punishment doesn't fit the crime. So yes, there are things that we need to do, but the overreach and the overcorrection is, I think, more problematic. And if we don't figure out answers soon, we're going to lose something really special that this country's had.
So I'm going to have a couple more questions, real fast, but go ahead, frame in whatever questions some of you may have of Erica. Give us a sense of what's happening with the student body. So you just welcomed, you just celebrated the class of 2025, but what's on the horizon? What does that future look like? And what are you seeing in the way in which, I know admissions are way up, believe it or not. I think last year there were like 48,000.
No, at Penn I think it was 60
Oh,
something
60,
thousand.
that's right, 48 was literally 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It jumped from 40 something to 60 plus thousand for a class of 2,000 students. That's how competitive it is.
And the same could be said of Georgia Tech and
Yes.
Emory and our local Georgia State. Like the
Yes.
demand
Yes.
is there. The
Yes.
absolute demand is there.
So what are you seeing in the students? There's a lot being said about international students choosing different alternatives. It's probably too soon to really have any trend information on that, but what can you say about the student body?
So the thing that has kept me motivated and invigorated, and I see a lot of young people here in the audience today. Can I ask if you're college age to stand up? Because I've seen several. I saw a group come in. Yeah, look at that.
Okay.
Awesome.
Automatic admission to the university. Whoops.
But looking out at that, that's what keeps me motivated, right? It's been a rough 5 years, and higher education is not a fun place to be. So when people ask me, are you having a good time? Well, the answer is no. I'm not having a good time. But I will say, there's no other sector that I would want to work this hard for than higher education, because I am inspired every day by the young people that come into these doors. They are smart, they're talented, they're motivated, they're eager, they're ambitious, they're kind, and they care a lot about what happens in society. So it's not even the kids that come to Wharton, which you would think are just the ones that want to go and make a lot of money. They want to make the money in the right ways for the right purposes. They are mission driven, and that I find very inspiring.
Excellent. I can relate to that. So in your address to the Wharton class, talk about your message.
So my message was the 3 R's. You've got to be able to recognize the world that we're in and recognize not only the problems, which are ubiquitous in many respects, but also the opportunities, the possibilities that come with change. You've got to reflect on what you've learned and the pathway that you have taken to get to where you are, and this is true for young people and adults alike. It's take the time to pause and reflect on everything that you've gained, the knowledge you have, the resources you have, and there's a gratitude that comes when you start to reflect and realize how blessed in many respects we all are. I forgot my other R. Recognition. Resilience. Yeah. Yes, because I've been dean at Wharton for 5 years. I started when COVID just happened, and every year since then there has been another major threat of some sort. And I have come to believe that because of the pace of change, this is just the world we're operating in. Crises used to be something that happened periodically. Now they are events, they are circumstances, it's an environment of constant, perpetual uncertainty and ambiguity. And I think we've got to prepare ourselves to live in that world and be resilient from all of the everyday challenges that we're going to continue to face, but see those challenges as possibilities.
Thank you. So Adrian, I am going to stop my questions and hand it over to...
James, I thought your third R was going to be Rotary. Let me start by asking one question. We've got Agnes Scott in the room, we've got Georgia Tech in the room, we've got Emory in the room, we've got Kennesaw in the room. Goodness knows who else I'm forgetting. Oglethorpe in the room. What can this club, you're a former Rotarian, what can we do to make higher ed more resilient and not subject to the whims of all the things that you just talked about?
I think it goes back to something I said earlier, and that is the more that business is engaged with higher education of all facets, the more you understand what it is we're trying to achieve and how we can help facilitate what you're trying to achieve, those partnerships are powerful. So I would say if you have not engaged with your local college or university, find someone there who you can reach out to, tell them what you do, introduce students to the work that you do, meet the faculty who are doing some incredible research, and just start to build those collaborations.
We will do that. Thank you for that call to action. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, Erica. Jonathan Reckford with Habitat for Humanity. Thank you for your comments. I had a question specifically about business education. I'd served before COVID on the board of a West Coast rival to Wharton, and the great debate was outside the top 5 or 10 schools whether the 2-year MBA was an endangered species. And so as you look at sort of what's going on and how the evolution of business education, how's that happening? And tied to it, if it's not too complicated, just talk about the value of having international students at a time where suddenly that is being threatened in business education.
Yeah, so to me the value of the degree is not going away, whether it's a business degree or a liberal arts degree. What we choose to do with it and how we choose to leverage that information, the people who have the skill sets that come from those degrees, is the question. And the role of international students cannot be overstated. What we learn from this society, because we've been really fortunate in America for a long time, and it's easy to get caught up in just the American way. But there's a whole big world out there, and young people are exposed to it more and more. And the more that we are able to bring together people from around the world through our international students that are coming into our U.S. schools and sending our students, equally as importantly, out into the world, that's where the future lies. And so if we don't have our international students, if we're not engaged with countries outside of the United States, I don't know how we continue to advance as a society, because they're all engaging with each other.
Erica, somebody made the observation, this is one of the areas of U.S. soft power that we just take for granted, don't realize that that is how we get out there into the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
So, okay.
Lee.
So on a day when we're celebrating that for the first time in history, 11% of Fortune 500 companies are run by women, and I put celebrating in quotes, and just knowing that the environment we're in today and the backlash in terms of focusing on the advancement of women, and knowing you and knowing your passion for advancing women, I'm curious, what's your thought on the role of higher ed in continuing to produce diverse leaders?
I have a lot of thoughts. So the reality is, when I look at the schools that I've been affiliated with, the diversity is already there, and that is because the talent exists and it's finding its way into the university system. And then we have a responsibility to ensure that once students are in our world, we embrace them and support them and help them achieve their life goals and ambitions. The attack that has happened on what we refer to as DEI is something that I'm unfamiliar with it, because it has become such a bad and negative frame for something that was intended to be so positive. And so the challenge that I have is, how do I support the incredible array of people who are at the institution that I'm a part of and help them be successful, knowing that they feel such fear and dismay and feel like they're being attacked. And look, I'm a black woman, dean of the Wharton School of all things. So the attack on DEI felt also very personal to me and made me question, do people think that I don't deserve to be here, that I'm taking the spot of someone else? And it takes all the resolve, which I guess is another R, all the resolve to remind myself of the track record that I have that got me here. It wasn't by accident, and nor do I think that is the case for any of our international students, of our women, of African American, Hispanic, whatever your identity is, you've earned the right to be where you are. And I think that's the work that we need to continue in the world.
Very well said. David.
Good to see you. I have a son who's starting business school in the fall, and I'm wondering about its student experience it's going to be like for him. Everything from, it's a 2-year program that I have a feeling it's going to go like in a blink of the eye. So over the years of working with students, and I'm asking for all the young people here as well, not just my own son, what's going to be the key to a successful 2-year experience at a business school so that he comes out with all he can get with it? Because he's going to have all these things to do. And also, can the business school stay separate and apart from the noise of the overall university?
It's an important question. And I would be disingenuous if I said that hasn't been part of my goal, is to sort of keep Wharton on the down low in the midst of all of this. But it has not been easy because we are so much a part of the broader university, and our stakeholders are connected to what's happening in the world. So I would say, for your son's perspective, there's the content that he will gain from the courses, which I think that I don't believe everybody in the world needs a business degree, but I do believe everybody needs to know the fundamentals of some of the business foundation, how economy works, how to manage your money, how to manage people. So I do think that gaining as much from the courses and taking his coursework seriously and building relationships with his professors should be job one. And secondarily to that, part of what people enjoy about an MBA degree is that it is also a degree where you foster an incredible network of people who are going to be lifelong colleagues for regardless of what field or industry you go into. So building the relationships with his peers and classmates, I think, is job two. It is going to go by in the blink of an eye, which is a good thing if you're paying for it, because you want the pain to be over. But it is the degree that has the largest return on investment of every professional degree in the universe, and has for a very long time. So it will be worth it.
That's made you feel better, David, right? Stephanie?
So this question is a little bit for Penn overall, but also for how it impacts Wharton. One of the things that I think we have all been seeing is not only attack on elite universities, but attack on science and research and intellectual rigor across the board. And so I'm just curious if you are seeing an impact on the top researchers, professors who are potentially wanting to exit. I know Nature had a survey recently of the top. They interviewed 1,200 scientists. 72% of those scientists said they were willing to consider leaving the U.S. So how is that impacting overall the institution? And what is being done to help young people understand that it's okay to be smart? I mean, I want the smartest doctor, the smartest engineer working on any project I'm involved with. So it's kind of a twofold question.
Yeah, I do believe that it's premature to know yet whether or not people will act, those 72% will actually act on a willingness to leave the country to pursue their work. But we are definitely seeing other countries be pretty aggressive in seeking the talent of American researchers and scientists. China in particular, Canada in particular, Europe in particular, all regions of the world who would love to have the talent that comes to us. And now we are particularly vulnerable. And so I do worry that we may lose some of that talent. And the second question was, how to keep young people make them know. I don't think we have to worry about the young people. The ones that I interact with, and it's not just the ones at Penn or Wharton, they're already pretty motivated. And I think they're in a position where they want to find ways to address some of what they see as the world's most challenging problems. And some of them will do that from an entrepreneurial standpoint, some of them will do that through a corporate standpoint, some of that will do that through social impact and not-for-profit work. It's the young people I'm the least concerned with at the moment.
Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong. You actually also asked about the scholars, right? Attracting the scholars to the university? Yes, so it was not just young people, but scholars wanting to come to the university.
So there's the domestic scholars, those students who are already in the country getting their PhD and enticing them to stay here, and then there are those scholars who are interested in coming here from outside of the United States. Right now, the climate is not a very inviting, welcoming climate to people outside of this country. I don't have to tell you all that, we know that. And I do worry that they will make choices not to go here, and when that happens, it's decades before we can rebuild that pipeline. So that's the biggest fear, is what happens in the very short term if we're not able to attract scientists and scholars from around the world, is we will be decades behind very soon.
One quick comment before Lonnie. So I will tell you, for the university more broadly, and the dichotomy that Erica set up, those from outside and those from here, very real. When I was on the board of Fannie Mae, as chair, I used to meet with the head economist before every board meeting just to get a reading on the state of the economy. And in the early days of the Great Recession, money was still flowing into the buying agency securities, Fannie and Freddie mortgage-backed securities. And I said, Doug, I don't get this. We know the state of the economy is crap. Why are people still investing so heavily? And he said, Egbert, if you don't remember anything else, remember 3 words: we suck less. So you can only fix what you can here. If you are the best at what you do, doesn't matter how much competition there is out there, if you're the best, you suck less than all of those other people, so the money will flow to you. So we can take care of the U.S. The broader problem is the one we have a bigger challenge with, and that is having the U.S. be a beacon in the rest of the world. So.
Well said. Lonnie, final question.
Yeah, it's sort of a loaded question. Given that education is literally an economic engine for prosperity, and given that the population at large makes decisions about the direction of the country, what do you think the role of government should be in education?
I think there is a role for government in education. I think we have to rewrite the rules and set a new standard for how we engage. I think we actually need an MOU for how we operate and build alliances and partnerships. Universities, the work that we do, the scientific research, the engineering research is costly. It is very, very expensive. And the world has benefited because government was helping support that work at universities. So if that were to go away, we're in a different kind of world. So I hope that it doesn't go away, but I also think we have to rewrite how we engage with one another so that I had a staff member come up to me the other day and say, why can't we just take the philanthropist money and then they get out of the way? And I was like, well, if someone asked you for $100 million, wouldn't you want to have a say what they do? So I understand the need to have engagement and to have a voice in how your money, the government's money, is being spent. But there also needs to be some kind of firewall so that we can continue to do the work independent of the political partisanship that is necessary for advancing society, but also is respectful of those who have made the decisions, the policies to grant us the opportunity to do that work. So I don't know what that MOU looks like going forward, but I think we need a new case for support.
Erica, thank you for coming back. We've missed you so greatly. Egbert, thank you for leading us in this wonderful discussion. Take a look at what David Romer and his team have cooked up for the rest of this month. I'm very excited to announce we'll have Paul Brown, the co-founder of Inspire Brands, here next week. Bernice King is going to help us in a discussion with Brian Stevenson of EJI. We're going to have Egbert back with former Mayor Shirley Franklin to talk about Atlanta 2.0. And we're going to end the year with Rotarian Sons Day. Lonnie, I don't know if you know Shane Kimbrough, but he's going to be here talking to our sons about what it's like to be an astronaut. So here's what I took away from today. Recognize, reflect, resilience, resolve, Rotary, and we suck less. Have a great day. This meeting's adjourned.